I'm Rita Cevasco.
I'm Claire Baker. And today we are talking all about metacognition.
Right. So we hope you'll be able to join us or watch later as we talk about ways to expand your brain, expand your learning, and deepen learning, and expand your teaching. How's that?
You need like a deepen thing.
No, it comes between us.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Thought that would, liven us up on a Friday here.
That's right. We have just recently posted a blog. I say we, like I wrote that. You wrote it.
Posted
I posted. All about metacognition on our website. So there is a lovely blog with some extra tidbits of information. So if you're looking for more information about metacognition that we maybe didn't talk about here, that would be another great resource for further studying, further reading.
Yes, and in case you think this is just another jargony word, this word has been around for about 20 years now, and people have been talking about this. We have this realization that our brains actually engage in thinking about how we think. So I say metacognition is this ability to think about how we think, talk about how we talk, or talk about how we think too, and learn about how we learn. So this is a really important piece of teaching. In fact, I would argue that teaching is not complete without this piece being added to it.
Right.
I mean, what we don't want is that I'm the teacher and I'm just lecture, and the student just takes it in and then just regurgitates whatever I say and then we're done. That's not real learning, and we all know that.
Right.
There's lots of research behind that. You don't even need to spout the research because we all just know that's not, deep learning.
Right. And those times when, you can pick up information, certainly doing it that way, we all have had some kind of learning experience like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're actually aiming for those really memorable, those deep learning moments, the things that will stick with you, that you're able to apply across multiple forms of education,
multiple
places.
Concepts
Yeah,
too. When you start really connecting ideas, or you take an idea and it's showing up in your work, that's when we have deep learning. So yes, you're right. We've all learned things, memorized them, regurgitated them back, forgotten them, moved on.
Mostly forgotten.
Mostly forgotten, except maybe that one thing that intrigued us and we spent some time thinking about it and engaged in some metacognitive thought, where we really started to apply it to other ideas or connecting ideas, connecting concepts. That might be the one thing we remember, but we don't really remember the stuff that's just, input, output.
Right.
It really has to go through our heads, weave its way through our thinking, our thought processes, to really make a difference in our learning.
Right.
So we have some strategies that we use. For one thing, to remind us as educators to be metacognitive, right? To always be setting up. I'm not just telling you what to do, nor am I leaving you out there, hey, figure this task out.
Right.
You can just flounder all you want and I'll just give you a check for good work done, right? No, I want to have this level of we're talking, we're thinking, we're really working through a process.
It's interactive sometimes it's physically interactive, but it's also interactive on that mental plane.
On that mental plane, so that I know that real learning is going on. So sometimes metacognitive type teaching happens before we start learning, and sometimes it happens in the middle of learning, and sometimes it happens at the end. So if you can think of it that way, it's really, really helpful. So one of the things I do, I'll start with before we start learning. So one of the things I do with new students all the time is when I first meet them, I talk to them about do they know why they're here? Do they know what they're working on? Before I even get to what are their goals, which is another important conversation, I talk about, well, you know what? So you're here, say you're here to work on your reading, or you're here to work on your writing. Those are two typical reasons why kids see me. And so I say, okay, so you know what? We all have strengths and weaknesses. You're going to see mine. We're going to talk about it.
Mine will be very obvious.
Yes, mine will be obvious very soon. And one of them is, what is your name again? Because I have a terrible time with names. Anyway, so I always use that. I say, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So one of my strengths is blah, blah, blah. And I kind of say that. And then one of my weaknesses is I'm not very good with names. Sometimes I misspell. I have some spelling issues, which is why I like spelling. Believe it or not, I have a hard time with spelling too. That's why I tell kids, you know, it's not that I'm doing this because I'm good at it. I'm doing this because I have to work at it too. And now I really like it because it's interesting to me. So we go through this and I ask kids, and sometimes I'll set up like a Venn diagram, you know? So what are your strengths? What do you think your weaknesses are? And what's kind of in the middle? Like, and then we talk about, we map things out and we'll write this in. And this is a picture of them that they are telling me. That's metacognitive. I'm getting them thinking about, hey, what am I really good at? And then I also begin to say, and do you like that too? And then we begin to notice that we tend to like things that we're good at, and we tend to really dislike things that we're not good at. Yeah. Okay. And so then I kind of point out to them, you know what? So you're here to work on something that you've told me is hard for you and you don't like. And guess what? We're going to make that stronger. My big goal would be to move it over to what I'm good at, what I like. Yeah. But even if I get it to that middle section of that Venn diagram, I'm going to be happy because that will be real progress, because I'm like you. Guess what? I hate to line dance. I know you guys have heard this a million times, but I use that with kids. I hate to line dance. I'm really bad at it. I'm not blah, blah, blah. I can tell some embarrassing story. Okay? I have many. Anyway, so that's metacognitive, right? I know it is really, really sad, but that's metacognitive.
Right. I was just going to throw in, I feel like it can also be a little bit of an unexpected conversation, which is kind of an added bonus, and can help get to a metacognitive level or a deeper metacognitive, even more metacognitive. That particularly if a kid comes and sees us, they know that there's a reason they're coming to see us, but sometimes that conversation hasn't happened directly, where it's like, your mom's making you go, you know, my dad's making me go to this,
or even if it was discussed, that's all they heard.
Right, that's all they heard. So having somebody who's teaching you actively go, okay, why is it you're here, and why, and what is it you want to learn, and what do you think you're going to learn from this? Also helps trigger that shift in how they're thinking about, okay, I have to go learn my spelling because I'm bad at spelling. We've covered that, and that is good to think about. But then you have this extra level of, we're actually engaging, we're interacting in this real conversation about these pieces that you might not normally be having a conversation about.
Yes, which is true. You know, often I'll have kids start to set up goals with me. And, you know, we do this in our classes now too. We say to parents, we realized in our online classes that we do this metacognitive stuff with kids all the time, but we weren't doing it online with the educators that we were teaching. People, the adult classes, we weren't doing it as much. And so we start saying, what do you hope to get out of this class? That's the beginning of, hey, I'm getting to a mindset. First of all, I'm getting to a learner's mindset, right? And the second thing is I'm getting to a mindset of, hey, actually, that's a good question. What do I actually wish that I knew? Right? What do I wish? And what are my goals?
Yeah, because we come into that from the teacher perspective, and if you're used to teaching, you know, in any situation, you're used to coming in with, I know what it is I want to get across. I know what it is I'm trying to, by the end of this hour, you will have learned X, Y, and Z. But that doesn't always happen from the student perspective.
Right. So there are a lot of things I do with kids once I'm working with them. So I may say something like, oh, so we're going to do such and such, and how do you think you'll do with this? What do you expect from this? How much do you think you're going to like this? Do you have ideas already? You know, that's one of the things. We just do this kind of like, first of all, I like to know where my kids are at emotionally. But also, these are important things for them to be thinking, oh, wait, am I of a mindset? Sometimes kids will go, oh, I'm just really tired. You know, I always tell you, I have a lot of adolescent boys. They come in after a long day of school. Tired. I know, everybody's yawning, especially beginning of school. And I'm like, really, why are you tired? Let's talk about that. What can we do to make this rev up a little more? How long do you think you can give me, you know, good attention for this task? And we kind of just start to like, I'm really trying to build in some ownership. Like, it's not just that, hey, I showed up, I'm in the seat, I'm here, tell me what I got to do, how soon can I leave, right? So I'm building up some ownership. but also I'm getting them thinking about it. Yeah, I am tired. And yeah, that's making this a little harder. And well, what do I do when I need to bring myself to a task? Those are important questions. Okay. So sometimes what I also will do is we're about to start a task and I'll say something like, I have some notes here because there are so many of them and I just was kind of brainstorming them. I say, so what do you think how do you think you're going to approach this task? What's your plan for this task? Do you have some ideas? What are some strategies you're going to use for this task? And sometimes they're like, I don't know, I'll just, whatever. But as we begin to talk, and as we begin to teach, then I start to say things like, so what was the strategy I taught you? Tell me back what strategy we used.
What we did. Did
you think it helped? In what ways did it help? And then sometimes they'll be like, well, I don't know. And I'll say, well, you know what I noticed is, blah, blah, and I'm very specific. You used the strategy. You had forgotten maybe. I reminded you, or we did this strategy together. Or maybe I was so impressed that I didn't even have to remind you. You used this strategy. And when you did, this was the result. Look at this. And so we unpack, what am I going to do for this task, right? What am I going to do? Then what did I do?
What's cool about that is that if you keep building up this habit of doing that, eventually more and more, even if you don't have a conversation about it, what happens is they are more aware of the strategies they're using. And so like you said, he might use something without realizing it, or hopefully he does realizing it, or the student realizes they're using it and actively pursues using a particular strategy or a piece of information.
Right.
Because
so it starts to show up.
Yeah.
Right. It starts to show up because that's part of what we're teaching. We're getting them thinking about how they think. We want them using strategies. So before a task, what strategies are you going to use? Is a great way to hold them accountable. Right. Instead of just, I'm doing it the same way I've always done it.
Right. Or because you told me to do it a certain way.
Right. Now it's, oh yeah, what is it I'm supposed to do again? Sometimes kids will say that to me. Oh yeah, okay, what is it I'm supposed to do again, right? That's okay. Oh, remember when we do this task, we use this strategy. Do you remember that? And that's one of the reasons why we use language arts binders and all kinds of notebooks. We show kids, remember you did this? We talked about this. A lot of times after doing a task or at the end of a session, I might say, what have you learned? What do you think you've learned? If you had to go home and pick someone.
Yeah.
Grandma, mom, dad, your sister, whoever, your friend. If you had to tell someone, this is what I learned today, what would you say? And it's very enlightening. Not only
it's a good question.
It's a really good question. And a lot of times kids are kind of like, I don't really know what I learned. Yeah. That's okay. That just kind of tells me where they are in this process of ownership and thinking about how they think. But also, a lot of times, I think we disregard what we learn.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Or you forget, too. That's the other part. Aside from, disregarding it, you also get I know I learned something today, but 20 minutes go past and
now I can't remember.
Tell you what it is.
That's a good point. So it's good to kind of interject all throughout. You might keep a running list of, oh, wow, you used this strategy today. That was great.
Or a new thing we discussed today.
We're 15 minutes in. What do you think you learned? Oh, let's write that one down, right? Or you write that down. And if they're writing, I want them to write it down because it's their learning, right?
Yeah.
So if they're writing and doing well with that, it's not going to tax them or take too much energy from the next task. I'll have them write it down. So that's really another important strategy. Oh, sometimes in the midst of doing an activity together, I will demonstrate my own metacognitive thinking. So I might read something I wrote. So a student and I are both writing and we're reading to each other. And I might say, first I thought I was going to write about this. But then I thought, no, I want to write about this. Isn't that interesting? And then I kind of try to get a conversation like, why did I change my mind? What was I thinking? I actually had many things to consider before I write. Right. Why did one feel better than the other? And I try to turn that around and see if I can get them to have that same kind of conversation of, you know, we have a little signaling going
Sorry,
on here.
yeah.
Threw me off. Sorry. That same kind of conversation. What were you thinking you could write about? What were some of the things that were in your head that you thought you could write about?
Which goes back to, as well, like I'm demonstrating it, but also the fact that Rita said that it's in the middle of what you're working on. Like right when we first got on, we're talking about this, it happens at the beginning. This metacognition, metacognitive, terrible word to say. The metacognitive conversation.
Oh, wow.
I know. Happens at the beginning, like before you set to whatever task you're doing, in the middle of, you know, all the stuff coming at you, you're having that conversation, and at the end you're having it. So that modeling right in the middle is a really good way to do that mid, you know, break point. Here we're going to stop and talk about it.
Yes, and so another thing we want to do is we might also say, what did you know about this already? So when we have this conversation about what did you learn, well, what did you know about it already?
You already bring to the table.
Right? Yeah. And how did you know that? And what made you think of that, right? And then now what have you learned? And then what do you wish you knew more about? Now that we know about this topic, what do you wish you were better at, or you knew more about?
Want to investigate more,
investigate
further.
And sometimes kids will be like, yeah, I don't want to know anymore. Because if I say yes, then you're going to say, let's look that up. But, you know, it's okay. You know, lots of us want to know more about something.
Sure.
We don't always pursue that. But just thinking, gosh, you know, that's one of those things someday I would really like to know a little bit more about. I think that would really be great. Another thing I like to do is sometimes, I'll never forget this, and this is one of my favorite stories. We had this horrible incident happen in central Ohio, like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, or I don't know how long ago. And someone had these tigers and on this farm, and they didn't have the money to keep feeding the tigers. And then I can't remember if the person like perished or something, but somehow these tigers that were starving got out into this town in central Ohio. It was like really this terrible thing. And what was really, really sad about it is no people were hurt. That was the good news. So it was a story that was okay to share because it wasn't like awful.
Horrible, yeah.
But it was really intriguing. But a couple of the tigers got captured, but a couple of them had to be killed because, you know, they were roaming through this town. So then there was all this controversy too about, you know, people keeping animals, and, you know, so there was like, this was real fodder for writing and talking and all kinds of conversation. So this one boy that I was seeing was like, you know, this is what they should have done. And it was like, put everything aside. This kid, like, I'm going to let him just go. And he drew up, you know, these traps and how they should do this. And this is the way to save the tigers. And he had all these plans, you know, just on and on and on and on. And I was like, well, gosh, you know, that was really some brilliant stuff you had going on there. Like, I loved it. And I'm trying to be specific. I liked this idea. I'm really not sure about that one, but this idea was really intriguing. And so I was like, how do you know this? And he said, I watch Animal Planet. Like, they need kids to solve this who watch Animal Planet because they would know. And I was like, you're right. You know what? We should, and we kind of ended writing this letter to the police department, which we did not mail. But there was like this letter about how kids who watch Animal Planet can be in a better position to solve these big problems. And it was like, you know, so it doesn't have to be thinking that you're like 100% on board with whatever, you know, it's just like, this is what I'm thinking. I took this idea from here and I applied it here. That's metacognition. Yeah. Right? Isn't that pretty cool?
That's awesome.
One of my
should have mailed them that letter.
I know. But, you know, you felt sorry for the police. Well, it was terrible. Another idea. So going back to that example, sometimes we will draw a map of what we did. And we're about to do our writing and editing class.
Right.
And I have to say, writing and editing requires a lot of metacognitive thinking. It really taps in.
It's based on that.
Right.
That's one of the foundational
I'm
pieces.
thinking about how I think and putting it in words on paper. I'm thinking about what my reader might understand, and I'm rephrasing it a different way, right? I'm imagining my audience, that's metacognitive. I'm tracking my spelling and capitalization and all the organization and all of that. That's metacognitive. I'm thinking about my argument and how I want to first do the strong point, then maybe a weak one, and then the strong one, counter argument. Right. All that is metacognitive. So one of the things we often do is kind of map out, like, what did you learn? How did you figure it out? What's your thinking? What's your strategy? Either that you're going to use, or what was the strategy we did use?
Yeah. And here, just to clarify, she's not talking necessarily about mapping out what the paper is. It's not creating an outline, though you can do that. That's a different conversation. But this is kind of that, like, you're not creating what you're going to write. You're creating, or you're looking at how you've written it. So it's that little bit of a difference there.
Right, it is. And also, like, what are you going to do next time? What is it that you want to remember next time?
Or what worked really well? That's that part of that as well. Like, did this help get a thought out really quickly or easily, or a really strong part of what you wrote? And was this strategy maybe not as good?
Right. Sometimes kids will say, that one just doesn't work for me. And I'm like, this other student thought that really worked for them, so you're not so crazy about it, but let's see how your idea works, and then maybe we'll try that one again some other time. That's okay. Another thing I do is I will say, okay, before you begin, what strategies are you going to use? That's a way I come back to, what have you learned? What do you need to apply? Not me standing over you. Right? We might even make it a list, but the list I try to get to come from them.
Right.
And I may add some things. Remember that one thing I really like you to also remember? But mostly, what are our strategies? And a lot of times what happens is you get this kind of like, because actually I was just going to write and not think about the way I was supposed to do it. Right? I wasn't actually going to apply the new things I'm learning. Right? And so when you say, so what do you need to remember? Then they start going, okay, well, I have to remember to say it while I write, and I have to remember to blah, 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 blah. And they just kind of start, okay, all right, so that's what we're going to use. You're using this strategy. I have to remember I'm going to look at my notes because that helps me, or something like that. These are the things I've learned about myself. This is what helps me. Another thing that kind of took me full circle to where we started. Yeah. Right? Like, what are you going to use? What do you already know? But the other thing that can happen is when kids come and they tell me how they performed on something, I'll do a lot of like, were you happy with that? Why do you think that was hard? What was it that might have made that better? And not like in a lecturing way, but just really thinking about it. Well, I'm not surprised that you liked that task, because what I've noticed about you is you're really good at fill in the blank, and for me, like my big thing is I don't do well on multiple choice tests. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I overthink them. It doesn't matter how well I know something. Let me write about it. I'm fine. Don't make me take a multiple choice test. And so I'll tell kids, I don't know what it is about me. So it's multiple choice tests are really, really difficult for me. And, are you good at that? Do you like fill in the blank better? We kind of do that kind of thinking. It's just important conversation to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Really, metacognition, really we just start applying it. Start thinking about it. Start having these conversations.
It's not easy, too. On one level, it's one of those where it's easy to ask somebody, like, how does that make you feel? Or what do you want to use? It's easy to ask that question. But actually having that conversation is not easy, simply because it's really mentally taxing. It's a lot of, if you're not used to thinking about your thinking.
Yes.
It's very unusual, and it's very, very foreign construct.
So as Claire said, I wrote a blog about this. We do this all the time, right? We hear this from people all the time. They'll talk about what they're good at, and how they need to do, how they do with map skills. Like, you'll hear people talk about those kinds of things. This is critical, as we said, for writing and editing.
Yes.
So we will be talking about that in our class coming up.
Yeah, the laying a path. Yeah, laying a path supported writing and editing. So one of the key pieces, like we said, is metacognition, and so we're going to be talking a lot about how to apply it to the writing and editing process, and how it enriches, makes richer, enriches. Thank you. The writing and editing process, and can make that more successful. In a lot of different ways, and all the pieces of how that blends together.
Right. So we will be weaving that throughout the class the way we try to weave it in when we work with kids. And that's part of what we mean by supportive writing and editing is writing. So there's one of my,
that was good.
One of my flaws, you'll see.
That's right.
It's important because if you're not really connecting to that, think about how you think. That's really where the rubber hits the road when it comes to writing and editing.
Yeah, the holes become very obvious then.
Right. Okay.
But how to fix them doesn't always. And that the class is available on our website under classes.
Yes, and you can find the blog about metacognition on that as well.
The website. Under
Thanks
blog.
for being here. It was nice to have a nice little conversation about metacognition. And we are all engaged in that and putting that into our classes and asking it of the educators who take our class for you to be thinking about how you think. And how do you learn?
Talking about how you talk.
Yes.
Learning about how you learn.
Yes.
All of it.
All of it. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.